So it doesn't seem that that even if the Israelis or us took out the supreme leader, it doesn't necessarily mean that the government would collapse.
Victor Davis Hanson often frames his discussion of the economy within the larger decline of American leadership and social cohesion.
Joe Biden's legacy he has a legacy, and it's going to be very hard to deal with for the next 20 years.
For him, economics is not just about markets and numbers.
Immigration is not just back in the news, it's in the news every single day.
It is about culture, values, and the strength or weakness of institutions.
The Iranians, that will not be the end of it, that will be the beginning. They will send cadres all around the world to attack our diplomats, our soldiers. They may try to kill Trump again, and this is a violation of his campaign oath. Realistically, some military analysts say, well, wait a minute, even if you take out some of the more prominent nuclear facilities, doesn't mean they can't be rebuilt very quickly. So then the question hinges on, are you going to take out the regime? There's not a lot of evidence in the past that airstrikes will take out a regime. We tried it with Saddam Hussein, as you remember, in 2003, and it did not work. We tried it with Gaddafi during the Reagan administration. It did not work. We couldn't quite get rid of Milosevic. That was a combined error in the Balkans, and we had troops on the ground.
He believes that the culture of endless borrowing, fueled by cheap credit and political avoidance of hard decisions, is unsustainable.
The administration, the Trump administration, is doing a heroic job to close the border, but that's not the problem now. They solved that existential problem. The problem is that you have 12 million people here that are completely unaudited. And this is in addition to somewhere between 10 and 20 million that were here already prior to Biden. And on a good day, Tom Holman and ICE and the Border Patrol can maybe deport, they find 800, but Joe Biden let in 10 times that number per day.
In his analysis, both parties have failed to address this crisis.
Immigration is not just back in the news, it's in the news every single day. Almost every single day we see someone here illegally, like Mr. Soleiman committing an act of terror when he tried to burn Jewish activists, burn Jews. We saw Mr. Abrego, who was an M13 member and became a cause celeb when he was deported. He was a spousal abuser. He was a gang member, he was a human trafficker. I don't even want to get into the sad, tragic tale of all of these young, beautiful, vibrant women who have been killed by illegal aliens. I don't want to get into the issue that here in Fresno County, about a half of the traffic accidents, the people involved that were culpable have left the scene of the accident. So it's a real problem, and let's put it in some historical perspective.
Democrats, in his view, push for expanding entitlements without serious concern for fiscal limits.
Joe Biden's legacy he has a legacy, and it's going to be very hard to deal with. For the next 20 years, we're going to be dealing with the fact that he and Alejandro Mayorkas deliberately, intentionally destroyed immigration law as we know it. They opened the border, and they let in 12 million people. Keep in mind some data.
Republicans, meanwhile, talk about restraint, but often fail to deliver when in power.
And so I think he's pretty safe there. And finally, is Russia and China going to come in? I don't think so. Russia looks at this and it starts to bully, it starts to say this is our former patron, we should protect it. But Russia's got its hands full in Ukraine. It's lost over 1 million wounded, dead, and lost. It is in a wartime mode against Ukraine. And more importantly, when they look at the Middle East and they see all this turmoil and oil prices creeping up, they think it's wonderful. How about China? China, for just the opposite reasons, is not going to intervene. It looks at this and says, oh my gosh, we used to get 70 to 80% of the oil from Iran. 50% of all the Middle East oil goes to us. We don't want any turmoil. Please, just cool it. Stop it. It's not in our interest to encourage this conflict to continue.
This dynamic erodes public trust and deepens cynicism about government promises.
And more importantly, China is in a trade war with us, and the last thing it wants is to get on the wrong side of a still military superior United States. Sum it up, the war seems like it's going well for Israel and in their point of view. There's a 50-50 chance there might be a regime change. There's probably a 25% chance. If there were, it would be something much, much better. The United States may have to intervene, but it's holding back because it still thinks that the Israelis, as brilliant as they are, will come up with some sort of new solution to destroy these underground facilities.
Another recurring theme in Hanson's perspective is the decline of the American middle class.
And they have wiped out all of the command and control of people in their 50s and 60s in the military. They have taken out a whole generation of nuclear physicists. Mr. Khamenei is all by himself, and now that he's hit an Israeli hospital, he can be taken out. And the Iranian people may come up and come out of the shadows and say, we're tired of them, especially because most of these people that have tormented and directed the torture and the oppression and the destruction of our daily lives are dead. And now Mr. Khamenei is under assault, and he may be killed, and that would create a revolution. And if you have a revolution, even if you did not hit all of the sites that were being necessary to ensure the end forever of the nuclear program of Iran, a new government would be better, and they on their own initiative would take it out.
He notes that economic policy increasingly benefits the coastal elites and large corporations, while rural and working-class communities are left behind.
So Putin and the Russian military are thinking, if they destroyed a third, what's stopping two-thirds or the whole thing? How do we stop this? And who got them that close to be launched? And do we have enemies among our military? What's going on? So it was very effective. But the point I'm making is there's going to be a retaliation. And there were certain rules in the Cold War that the two superpower rivals that were nuclear did not use a proxy to attack the homeland of another. So imagine if during this Cuban Missile Crisis, Fidel Castro launched missiles that took out a third of our B-52 fleet. We wouldn't just go after Castro. We would say to the Russians, you broke the rules. You're attacking the American homeland using a proxy.
Industries that once provided stable wages and opportunities, agriculture, manufacturing, and energy production, are either regulated heavily or outsourced.
So it doesn't seem that that even if the Israelis or us took out the supreme leader, it doesn't necessarily mean that the government would collapse, or that whatever replaced it would be much different in this pessimistic appraisal. And the pessimist then would say, why not negotiate and bring back the monitors, and you would have a breathing space of 3 to 4 years given the rubble of the current nuclear infrastructure, where there would be heightened tension, and we could negotiate ourselves out of this and stop this war that has ripples throughout the Middle East and involves superpower possible intrusion from China, Russia. Let's go through the most optimistic scenario very quickly. There are people who are saying, no. It's going great. Israel's taken out 50% of the mobile launchers. If you look at the number of missiles that are reaching Israel each day, they are diminishing, and Israel's ability, therefore, to knock out these vestigial attacks will increase.
While Mamdani's rhetoric may appeal to certain demographics, Hanson warns that the skeletons...
We've talked before about the frontrunner in the New York mayoral race, Zolan Mamdani, and we've mentioned before that he talked about seizing the means of production, which comes out right out of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels' Das Kapital, the Communist Manifesto. We talked about his claims that he never advocated defunding the police, even though there's an extensive social media trail where he advocates just that. He talked about going into richer and whiter areas and taxing them specifically at a higher rate. Kind of ironic, as we mentioned, that the highest income group in the United States by ethnic background are people from India, Indian Americans, Mamdani's parents, for example. He didn't say, in other words, richer and Indian American. He just used the word white because he's trying to cater himself to the African American vote.
Hanson suggests that Mamdani's growing popularity within socialist and activist circles might shield him, temporarily, from the kind of accountability the public deserves.
All that being said, because he is such an extremist figure, and because he has been pampered and grown up very rich, was never really required to go out and get a job and go through audits. He's been a rapper, he's been an activist, he's tried to run for office. He has an extensive left-wing record, and now that he's in the public realm, everything is starting to come out. Just give you a couple of examples. His father was in a discussion, a conference discussion, and said that Adolf Hitler's idea for the final solution and many of his policies toward the Jews came from Abraham Lincoln. The way Lincoln supposedly created or treated Indians on reservation. That's crazy. Al-Awlaki, I don't know if you remember him, Al-Awlaki, he was an American citizen that went to Yemen, and he advocated killing Americans, and he was a terrorist.
According to Hanson, political movements that thrive on emotional narratives tend to neglect critical examination of their leaders' records.
Barack Obama, when he was president, ordered a Predator hit team on him and killed al-Awlaki in a targeted assassination, who was, by the way, an ISIS supporter, but he was also a U.S. citizen. So we assassinated him without habeas corpus, be that as it may. That was Obama's decision. But now we learned in 2015, years after that Obama hit on him, on this ISIS figure, was one of the captains of ISIS and living in Yemen.
He draws parallels to similar figures who rose quickly on waves of populist energy, but faltered under the weight of real-world expectations.
Mamdani was defending him and saying basically he turned radical because the FBI surveilled him. That's like saying that Kash Patel turned radical because the FBI surveilled him. People don't go become terrorist kingpins because the American FBI thinks you're a person of interest. He has some other disturbing things as well. He posted a video on his social media of Indian Americans dressed as if they were Hasidic Jews, and they were making fun of the Hanukkah celebration.
In Mamdani's case, Hanson points to unanswered questions about his alignment with controversial positions on foreign policy, policing, and his role in campaigns that have alienated working-class voters in favor of more radical ideological goals.
And they had a menorah there, and they were chanting as if they were rap music. It was very derogatory toward Jews. Yet why would he put that there on his social media account? That's not the end of it. He's very sensitive about the African American and Latino vote, which I don't think he's going to win. But now we learn that when he applied to college, to Bowdoin, and I think further to graduate school, in which he was not admitted, he claimed that he was an African American. And, as someone who was in academia for 3 decades, I used to have students that were from North Africa, Egypt or Morocco or Algeria, but were not African American. That is, they were not blacks, and they tried that trick.
As Hanson sees it, this is emblematic of a larger problem within progressive politics.
And they were not successful. Either was Mamdani. But imagine he's giving lectures, moral lectures, sanctimonious lectures, self-righteous lectures about how unequal the United States is, and then yet he tries to mimic that or pass on a Elizabeth Warren or a Ward Churchill-like fraud that he's African American, that he's a black African, just because his parents, who were Indian and immigrants to Uganda and were one of the 1% elite in that country, and they were thrown out and as refugees.
A willingness to overlook practical governance in favor of symbolic activism.
He's now claiming that he should have had special, I shouldn't say he's now claiming, he claimed that he should have had special preference in admissions because he was black. You add all of this up and I guarantee you more will come out every day, because he's a pampered, privileged, angry, young socialist - communist. He's had no experience, he's out of debt, and he has a long social media record. And the only question that I have for you, the audience, and me, because I'm genuinely puzzled about it, the more that we hear that he's lunatic and unhinged and anti-American and socialist, does that help him or does that hurt him, given the demographics of New York?
A nation that sends its citizens to fight must also take responsibility for their reintegration.
That's an optimistic appraisal. Here's a realistic appraisal: that Donald Trump is going to wait for at least a week, and he's going to see if the Israelis can come up on their own with a formula in lieu of a bunker buster to diminish or actually end all of these nuclear infrastructures viabilities. And what do I mean by that? Send commandos on the ground. Take F-35s with small bunker busters just again and again every day. Send them through the same blast hole. Or maybe get a C-130 and jerry-rig it up to get a 30,000-pound bunker buster. You wouldn't be at 50,000 feet, it might not have the momentum, but if you came in at 30,000 and you had air supremacy, maybe you could drop 2 or 3 of them in 4 or 5 of them with a C-130, and the United States would not be involved.
He calls for programs that offer job training, mental health care, and social support, not as charity, but as a duty.
And then more importantly, Israel is achieving complete supremacy of the air, and by that I mean not just the ability to go into Iranian airspace, but more importantly to diminish both the number and the effectiveness of Iranian missiles that are landing in Israel. As far as the MAGA base, the fact that Donald Trump said that he would take up to 2 weeks to make that decision, and that he's talked to people in the MAGA base and he's assured them there's not going to be a lot of boots on the ground.
Without such measures, the cycle will continue. Young people will go to war, return home broken, and be left to navigate an unprepared civilian world alone.
There's not going to be a long American presence. If he intervened, it would be a 1 or 2 shot deal. I think he's pacified most of the criticism, because the MAGA base isn't going to say, my gosh, you sinned against us. We're going to look at whom? There's nobody else there. There's only Donald Trump. There's no Republican alternative to him.
Hanson frequently critiques government overspending and ballooning deficits.
And then something happened this week. 2 things happened. A brilliant Ukrainian strategy of bringing by truck stealthily drones into the remote parts of Russia. Some of them are 2,500 miles away, Arctic bases, strategic bases that Russia counts on for the delivery of nuclear weapons and cruise missiles, and they have been used against Ukraine. Tupolev bombers, and lo and behold, they launched this stealthy raid by drones, and we've never seen anything like it in military history. It destroyed 30 to 35% of the Russian strategic bomber fleet. $7 billion, 41 of these huge planes, some of them were sort of intelligence planes as well.
He argues that the American economy, once built on hard work, discipline, and manufacturing strength, has shifted towards speculation, debt, and an over-reliance on technology hubs concentrated in only a few regions.
And then following up, there was a drone attack on the Kerch Bridge, that only link really that's accessible for easy transport from mainland Russia into the Crimea. It's essential. Now, the bridge will probably be repaired, but what am I getting at? It shows you that Ukraine is now kind of having a turtle strategy. It's not going to waste its limited manpower slugging it out, but it's going to use drones, and it's going to make over 1 million of them, and they are the cutting edge of inexpensive, effective drone fabricators, producers in the world. They're going to attack targets deep in Russia. Is that going to bring Putin to the table? I don't know. Strategically, it's justified to show Putin he could lose all of his bomber fleet, because it's not just that they destroyed 41 bombers, but there is no deterrence.